Let's look at how to replace components and take apart a Gardiner backpack. First of all, remove the 6 screws holding the base in place. And now we can pull off the yellow base. And this shows us the inside. First of all, if you wanted to replace the battery, you then need to remove the 4 screws holding the backpack battery tray in place. These are different size screws to the previous 6 you've taken out. So make sure you keep them safe and separate from the other screws. Now we remove the battery tray and take out the battery. And the spade terminals on there, and we'll need to pull those off carefully with a pair of pliers, making sure you don't pull on the wire itself. There we are. Put the battery to one side. If you were changing the battery, you would refit the battery with a new battery. If you didn't want to take the battery off and you were working on components, then we would advise pulling the fuse out before working on any of this so you don't damage any of the components. Now let's look at replacing the pump. Now, there's nothing wrong with this pump, but if there was, perhaps through old age, or if it got damaged by frost being left overnight in the van, you might want to change the pump. The pump is wired in with 2 wires that goes to these very simple but effective twist caps. So trace the red wire first of all, unscrew the twist cap, and you'll see all 4 wires are bared and twisted together, and then gently unwind and pull off and wind the others back in place. And for safety, I tend to put the cap back on so that I don't lose those 3 wires connected together. We'll take that back off when we replace the pump. Now trace the green wire. We do the same again. We unwind the cap, unwind the wires a bit, make sure we've got the right green wire, and gently unwind and pull off. And the same again. I tend to do that so the wires don't become disconnected and the cap doesn't get lost. So the pump is now unwired. Now we look at removing the pump. We have 4 screws holding it in place, and we have it attached to the orange hose. So what I use here is to reach in. I use a long handled screwdriver. It reaches in very easily to these inner screws. Undo them, and they should stay in place on the rubber feet. There's the 4 feet undone. Now these have different screws again from the other types, so if you do take them off, make sure that you keep them separate from the other screws because they're slightly different length and they have blunt ends. Then we need to disconnect this length of hose. We do so by undoing the hose pump. And to do that, I will need to use this on the head. You can use a small spanner or a smaller screwdriver. That's loosened the hose clamp off, and then that will pull off very simply from the outlet of the backpack. So now you can pull the pump very easily off, and that means that you can get to the other hose clamp on this side, loosen that off to the next tar, and then also this one here. So now we need to remove the orange hose from either side of the pump, the short length and the long length. And to do so, use a flat bladed screwdriver and prise it just to get the hose moving. See there, it's just started to move, and then you should be able to pull it off like so. And the same on the other side. Screwdriver in, just gets the hose moving off of the barb like so, and then you should be able to pull it off. It's a single barb here. So technically we've removed our pump. So the next stage would be to fit a new pump. So let's look at that next. Let's refit a pump to the backpack. Here we have a replacement pump, and the first thing is to fit the orange hose on. So this should very simply push on to the barb, retrieve the hose clamp, and then tighten up the hose clamp. There we are. That's a tight fit. And then we need to fit the short length of hose. Push it on firmly. Put the hose clamp back in position. And we do the same thing again. There we are. And that's a tight fit. Now pull out the hose so that the pump can sit back into position. And the first thing we'll do is push this orange hose onto the tank outlet. Push it firmly all the way down, and then tighten up the hose clamp onto it. Make sure that this is done up tightly enough, and the last little bit can be done up with a small spanner or a pair of pliers for better grip. There we are. That's tight. Now we need to screw the pump feet down to the base. Now make sure you use the correct screws, as we said earlier. These are the mid-length ones with flat ends. And start with one. Locate the hole. There we are. There we are. And then we repeat for all of the rest. There, the pump is now properly mounted. The outlet hose is in position. The inlet hose is here. We can now wire the pump in. So no special tools are needed for this. And we just take our two wires and put them back into the connection set. So the red junction, we unscrew the cap, untwist the wires a bit, put this wire back on with the other wires, and then twist them all back together. It's very simple but works very effectively. And then fully screw on the twist cap, and then check the wires that they're tight, and they are. Put the cable route back in the right place, and then we'll do the same for the green connection. Undo the thing, untwist the wires a bit, twist in the pump wire, and once twisted together, reconnect. There we are. And then if we route the wires as they were originally, so that all of the connections sits outside of the battery area. We've now refitted a pump. Obviously all the other components can be replaced if needed, and they're all connected via the same twist caps. Let's refit the battery. So you take your battery, you find your battery terminals. Push these on firmly. There, your two terminals are now connected, and then put the battery in place, making sure that all of the wiring runs well outside of the battery area. Although there is a channel underneath, they can run through the middle if you'd rather than that way. We refit your battery tray. Having worked on a unit before sealing it up, it's sometimes worth checking that the new component you fitted is working properly. So a quick flick of the switch checks our new pump is working, checks our new battery is powering the pump. Now we're ready to fit the base back on, which is just a reversal of what we did previously. Clip it in place, and then the 6 smallest screws we use to put back together. There we are, the base is back on, the components have been replaced.